once again slept poorly last night. He decided he had earned a walk to Chinatown for dumplings, but there was a woman sitting in the waiting room. He couldn't remember scheduling a new client. Was she in the wrong office? She was hunched over a copy of the New Yorker, so engaged with the text that she hadn't looked up when his office door opened. Her magenta scarf had slipped down, revealing the strap of a sleeveless orange dress. Only after Eleanor S. had closed the waiting room door behind her and Gregory remained standing, hands by his side, did she lift her head. Her eyes were chocolate brown, and her easy smile seemed genuine, suggesting a friend delighted by the arrival of her lunch date. "Hello," she said, her voice so warm that Gregory half expected her to stand and hug him. He started. "Are you here for Dr. Bodkin? I'm afraid he's not in today." Philip Bodkin, his mentor and friend who had the lease on the suite, was never in on summer Wednesdays, but perhaps he'd made an exception to his weekly round of golf at the club. The woman stood as if cued, ignoring his question. The magenta scarf drifted down her arms, revealing the rest of the dress, a summer shift that suggested curves without clinging to them. She approached him unencumbered. No purse, no phone, nothing left on the table except the copy of the New Yorker. Everything about her was vibrant. Against the beige backdrop of the waiting room, she seemed to emit a radiant glow. "Dr. Weber?" She extended her hand. "I'm Mira. Thank you for making time for me." When they shook, gripping longer than was customary, he felt like he was tacitly agreeing to something, but he didn't know what. He noticed a pale scar running from her nose to the corner of her lip. He wanted to tap open his calendar to see if he had scheduled this Mira months ago and overlooked the appointment. He typically tried not to book anything in his one free hour in the middle of the work week, but he had made some scheduling mistakes recently, an issue he attributed to his problems with live and sleep deprivation. But to completely forget an appointment with someone new, this was a first.
So, just as we're getting near the end of our time together, but just I wanted to touch on what you chose to read right there as well. So we get introduced to Mira, who becomes a obviously very pivotal character because she is our Wednesdays at 1 o'clock person as well. Did you have any particular inspiration when you came up with Mira's character?
She came in as part of my download with the characters. She announced herself as Mira, and only afterwards did I reflect on that name, how she is a mirror for Gregory in many ways, and she mirrors some of his shame. And so she felt, she evolved as the book evolved for me. I didn't know her relationship to Gregory when I started writing the book. I knew that they were connected to Gregory's past transgression, but I didn't know how. And so as the book unfolded and I figured out who Mira was, it was a revelation to me and really fun to discover her as a character. I'm not sure that it's a typical way of writing a story. Typically you'd have your two main characters and you would understand what their connection was, but it was all part of this really sort of strange, magical process that I'm so grateful for.
Oh, fantastic. That's really interesting too. So you said you were working on something new. What are you working on now?
It's another novel. It's called The Other Choice, and it's about a woman who isn't sure if she wants to have a child or not, but her fiance, who is a musician, his one requirement is, if they get married, is that they don't have children. So they just decide to be child-free by choice. They make that decision, they commit in marriage, and then her reckless younger sister gets pregnant, and it throws all of Ruby's certainty about family and children into turmoil. So it's about how we choose our families and how we create families in different ways while being sort of a rich woman's novel.
Are you setting that locally as well, or is it?
Of course.
Of course. Of course.
So much easier. It's so much easier. And there is a big piece set in LA, and the musician goes out to LA, and I keep looking at my calendar thinking, when can I sneak in 4 days in Santa Monica? So,
do you have a projected date for that?
I told my agent I'd have it done by Thanksgiving.
Ooh.
So I'm trying to stick to that. In fact, I was writing this morning and I'll write again this afternoon. So
all right.
once I get going with a project and I get the momentum and I start to really sink into the story and see the story start to form, then I just go with it. So I'm in the go with it phase now.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming and being on our show today. You can find Wednesdays at 1 there for you in libraries and bookstores and all the outlets that you normally would as well. And I hope that you enjoyed your time with us.
It was so enjoyable. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to, for everybody out there who's watching, please join us again the next time for a novel idea. And we will hope to see you again soon out there on the airwaves. So thank you so much. Again, I'm Noelle Bach, your host, and we'll see you next time.
Toxic therapy from your vape.
Can't sleep? Listen to my voice.
Your friends all bailed on you. Your crush thinks you're thirsty.
The planet is dying. Keep obsessing till 5 a.m.
Vaping nicotine is associated with sleep problems. Find solutions at thetruth.com.
Sorry. How was your break?
Probably less than a minute.
Good. Yeah. Do you have a plan? No, yes. Yes. How was the break for your family? Less so for you. Oh, fun. Nice. That's fun.
A little bit.
It was good. It went by quickly. We did a little mini trip to New York. We looked at some colleges for Eleanor. We did around here, Mount Holyoke and Smith.
You guys all set?
Did a few there, and then museums, etc. We are, I think so, yes.
All right, stand by. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good evening and welcome to the Tuesday, February 27th, 2023 meeting of the Long Meadow School Committee. School committees and other public bodies may continue to hold remote meetings through March 31st, 2023 under legislation enacted in July 2022. The statute, Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022, extends quorum reductions for remote meetings. All votes while there is remote participation must be made by roll call vote. This meeting is being recorded and aired live on LCTV. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll move on to correspondence. Turn it over to Mary.
The following correspondence will be recorded. Emails received from the following regarding the FY25 school department budget. Glenbrook Middle School teachers on 2/13/2024. Mr. Scott McGinley on 2/13/2024. Nancy and Tom Moriarty on 2/13/2024. Jennifer Mulcahy on 2/12/2024, Carolyn Seabury on 2/13/2024, Meg Tucker on 2/16/2024, and Christine King on 2/22/2024.
Thank you very much. Approval of minutes. We have 2 recommended motions for this evening.
I move that the school committee approve the minutes to the February 13th, 2024 school committee meeting as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll move to a roll call vote. Zach?
Yes.
Michaela?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Jamie?
Yes.
And yes for me as well. We don't have that in any one, right? No. Okay. Thank you. Second recommended motion.
I move that the school committee approve the minutes to the February 16th, 2024 school committee meeting as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. Zach?
Yes.
Michaela?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Jamie?
Yes.
And yes for me as well. All right, we're moving on to public speak. If there are any members of the public who would like to come forward and speak, I don't think we have anyone online, so in person, come on up. There's a microphone right here.
Thank you.
Can have a seat, tell us your name, and go from there.
Thank you. So my name is Christine Weber, and I am a student support specialist at Glenbrook Middle School. Okay. Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, and School Committee. My name is Christine Weber, and I currently serve as a student support specialist at Glenbrook Middle School under Title I. I am here to not only outline my responsibilities at Glenbrook, but also to address the potential implications of cutting this position due to a lack of funding for the 24-25 academic year. Such a decision would not only impact our students, but also place added strain on our teachers. This marks my second year in this role at Glenbrook, following 3 years of diverse experiences within Longmeadow Public School System. During that time, I fulfilled various roles, including work in math intervention at Blueberry, teaching in the extended year program at Wolf Swamp over the summers, leading after-school reading groups at Center, and completing a social work internship at the high school. Presently, I work with the middle school students at Glenbrook. Concurrently, I pursued my master's in social work from Westfield State University. Now with my initial social work license under DESE, I serve as a student support specialist. Over my 5 years at Longmeadow Public Schools, I've gained insight into best practices, identified systemic issues within the town and schools, and have gained an understanding of what families require to support their students' successes. As a student support specialist, I currently have a caseload of 27 students ranging in needs, whether academic, social emotional, executive functioning, behavioral, and former students in the PALS program, which is the emotional behavioral program that no longer operates at Glenbrook this year. Out of the 27 students that I work with, roughly 25% of them are struggling to come to school regularly or staying in class when they are here. These students are missing valuable class time, and when they are attending class, are lost due to the amount of work that they have missed. Obviously, one can understand the stress and anxiety that these students may be facing due to the amount of time out of the classroom. With this Tier 2 support, these students are able to not only discuss the challenges with me that they have not attending, but are also able to complete some of the work that they are missing in one place with an incredible amount of support. My room offers a safe space for students to not only discuss these feelings, but work on plans to get them back into the classroom, or a place to work if they're not ready for the challenges that may lie ahead. Over the past 2 years, we've seen an increase in the need for mental health supports. Therefore, the guidance department has become a place that is very busy. Students go in when they need breaks, someone to talk to complete work, or discuss challenges and successes. I've been able to help alleviate some of their needs by having a classroom I do to help take kids in when guidance is full, and provide Tier 2 level support to small groups or one-on-one. This position also provides a space where once the student is ready to attend academically, the student is able to complete work that they may have otherwise missed from not being in class. This Tier 2 support helps these students gain progress and success so they may not need Tier 3 supports in the future. The other 2 tier supports we have at Glenbrook are Math Lab and Literacy Lab. Now, these are incredible interventions and work for children with challenges in these areas. But what are we doing for students with other needs that are not strictly academic at the Tier 2 level? My position as student support specialist provides students the support they need every day at school, and outside of the limitations Tier 2 academic supports can provide. We've discussed how the needs of our students have evolved, increased since the pandemic, and how educators can support these students. Connections are critical in supporting students' well-being. I believe that connecting with students is my biggest strength. Yes, my caseload is only 27 students, but the number of kids that make their way to my room each day would probably make that number close to double. Whether to check in with me, to talk about a challenging part of their day, celebrate a success, or wanting to come to my classroom to get work done, my room is a place where these children feel safe, supported, and motivated to learn. We would be taking away a position not only curtailed to a child's unique needs, but the child's ability to work with a professional one-on-one, time permitting, and ignoring academic and emotional well-being. This decision would ultimately front-load the guidance department all over again. Over the past year, Principal Allen has worked tirelessly to create a student support center here at Glenbrook. She has described to me a place where students can go. That will be more welcoming than a traditional classroom or guidance office. a place where students can go for both academic and social emotional support. We've discussed what this room needs, how we could operate it, and how beneficial this would be to the population at Glenbrook. Having a station where kids could take breaks depending on their level of need, and also a space where kids can receive core subject material support. This type of student support center would allow me to provide even more students, to work with even more students, and have a bigger and more creative space to perform this important work. With the student support specialist position being cut, the Student Support Center will be without a consistent teacher running the room and will undoubtedly lessen the valuable student-teacher connections being made. Not only that, but without the student support specialist, the Student Support Center may fail and be in a state of non-use. Maybe it's the classroom, maybe it's the ability to have a less structured environment for some and more structure for others, but I also think students can count on me for help and support, and to support them no matter what the subject area. I provide a safe space, meet students where they are at, and use a trusted, empathy-first approach to support students in need. This position is not being cut by the district as a result of being unsuccessful, but rather strictly due to Title I funding. I hope that you can see the incredible importance and value this position provides Glenbrook and Wolf Swamp, and I hope that you can find a path forward to keep these positions full-time at both schools, if not all schools, for the sake of the mental health and well-being of our students. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for coming out. Appreciate that. Any further public speak? All right, seeing none, we will head into school committee announcements and recognitions. Anyone? All right, we're going to head into our next, which is other reports. We are going to see our Student Advisory Council on, what was the date again?
March 12th.
Thank you very much, March 12th, after they have had a chance to attend a conference and report back about some of the things they will be learning there. So heading into school committee chair report, just a quick reminder that Friday is the final deadline for nomination papers for school committee positions, and also that papers need to have signatures returned by March 5th, which is Tuesday. Other than that, I don't have anything this week. We'll turn it over to you,
Sure.
Dr. O'Shea, for superintendent's report.
A few items. Congrats once again to our Grinspoon Excellence in Teaching Award winners, Mary O'Brien, 3rd grade at Wolf Swamp. Amanda Wyckoff is a special education teacher at Blueberry Hill. Kayla Werlin, LHS music educator, and Jonathan Wheels, an LHS English teacher. So great representatives of a great teaching staff. So congrats to them. Our 8th graders were up at the high school today as part of their academic preview hour, their first opportunity to start to understand the high school program and consider what offerings might make sense for them in their freshman year. We met earlier this week with the coordinator of our summer enrichment program. So Mr. Mazza, Dr. Nelson, and I met with John Wills, who will, we talked about sort of how to improve and enhance our summer enrichment program. The center school roof SOI will be ready to hit send on that tomorrow morning once the minutes from tonight's meeting are approved. And what else? So families may have noticed that I sent out a district improvement plan survey recently, and that survey will be open for several weeks, but it's an opportunity for us to gather some feedback as we work towards the development of a new district improvement plan to commence in the fall of '24. And lastly, Nilda Irizarry and I have been working on a couple of family engagement events. One focused on what children are doing on their cell phones. So we've engaged the services of some knowledgeable folks in that area. And then also an event to help us understand the experience of Jewish students in Longmeadow, and really a specific targeted focus on anti-Semitism. So we're looking forward to those two events. Families can expect a flyer sometime soon. And then finally, March 8th is our Professional Development Day. Dr. Nelson has worked with the principals to arrange a great series of events for our educators. For educators in grades 6 through 12, there'll be a specific focus on UDL, Universal Design for Learning. That's been one of our commitments in our district and school-based goals. So it's another opportunity for us to orient staff to the tenets of UDL. So lots going on. Feels like that time of year where we're suddenly starting to look forward to the next school year in many ways. So, and certainly our meeting tonight is focused on that as well. So, if you have any questions on any of those, happy to answer now or at any point in the future.
All right. Any questions, feedback, or comments? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to our student representative report. Andrew?
Okay, so just a couple quick reminders to start. The LHS Student Council will have a batch fundraiser tomorrow, February 28th, and a Chipotle fundraiser on Sunday, March 3rd. The LHS class play High School Musical will be performed on March 14th, 15th, and 16th. I believe that's Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And then student leaders will be attending the Massachusetts Association of Student Councils Spring Conference, March 6th through March 8th. And our very own Zainab Sheikh will be running for MASC Vice President, so we wish her luck there. She's been on Instagram campaigning. It looks like she has a really good campaign, and I wish her really good luck. And then just a quick shout out to Gianna Reed for winning the Wrestling State Championship. It's really awesome.
All right, wonderful, thank you. All right, other reports, LPVEC, Mary.
Yes, we had a meeting on February 14th, and Miss Amy Drake, who is the Director of Special and Alternative Education, gave us a comprehensive overview of all of their programming. It was really interesting because they offer a wealth of programs, and although I knew the broad strokes, she did sort of a deep dive into all of the different programs that they offer. My bus update, the tablets have been installed in the buses. The app will be available to parents in April. If there is a change in the buses, then the app will not work because you only get updated on the bus that your kid should be on. And they've had to do a lot of switching arounds of buses. As you know, there's been a problem with bus drivers and some transportation issues with LPVEC. The electric buses should be in by late April or early March, and they will be in rotation for the next school year. And then we also had a financial update from their Director of Finance and Operations.
All right, wonderful,
Thanks.
thank you. Energy and sustainability, Adam?
The committee is focused on supporting initiatives for energy use and sustainability in Long Meadow.
All right, thank you. Seal, Michaela?
Tomorrow night there is a presentation by the Federation of Children with Special Needs that you can register for the Zoom link. It's been sent through the schools and through the district. It's all about the 504, and the presentations are really engaging and great and very informative. And there's always time to ask any questions that you might have. So if you're around, check it out.
All right, great, thank you. All right, moving into subcommittee reports. Finance sub, Jamie, any report?
No update.
All right. Policy sub is...
The policy subcommittee, yep, that's me.
Thank you.
Had 3 policies posted to the district's website to solicit public input. Policy IG, curriculum development for elimination. Policy IGA, IGD, curriculum development and adoption. And policy IGB, support services programs. We have not received any feedback on the posted policies. Tonight, the policies are presented for the second reading and approval.
All right, open to any discussion or questions or motions related to these policies.
Could I just link it into, so the school committee has set a goal of sort of ensuring that there is a formal process for curriculum review and update and adoption, and I think the policies before you tonight would help advance that goal that you've set for yourself. Specifically, the language in the new IGA, IGD indicates that the committee itself would officially consider and officially adopt new programs and courses when they constitute an extensive alteration in instructional content or approach. So I think that firms up the school committee's purview, its oversight of curriculum adoption. So.
All right, great, thank you. Anything else?
I move on the recommendations of the policy subcommittee the school committee approve policies IGA, IGD, curriculum development and adoption, and policy IGB, support services programs, as presented, and approve the elimination of policy IG, curriculum development.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion related to these? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to a vote. Zach?
Yes.
Adam?
Yay.
Michaela?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Jamie?
Yes.
And yes for me as well. Thank you to Policy Sub for the work that went into these new policies. Appreciate it. All right, Curriculum Sub, we just finished a meeting, so Mary.
Yes, we just had a great meeting with Beth Nelson, the Director of Curriculum and Instruction, who provided us with a lot of information. She gave us an elementary literacy pilot update. Our pilot is beginning on Monday. We'll be piloting 2 programs, Into Reading and Amplify CKLA. Students who are in classrooms where the programs will be piloted will be receiving information from their children's teachers by Friday. There's great representation from all elementary schools and grade levels, and she provided us some highlights of the programs. Beth also talked us through the curriculum review process. She shared with us some information about curriculum maps with a focus on UDL and backwards design. And she also talked us through some ideas about vertical planning and horizontal planning. One of the things I just want to commend Beth is that it's each component, so the literacy pilot update, the curriculum review process, the curriculum mapping, and the vertical planning was just really clearly articulated in writing with some really nice processes in place for how this can continue and be cyclical, and there's a process for each of these components. So I'm really excited about it, especially the literacy program pilot. So,
Yes.
just gonna
Excellent, thank you. Evaluation Sub, we will be meeting on March 6th at 5 p.m. And Naming Subcommittee, so we have received a naming request that will require the appointment and assembly of a naming subcommittee. This is typically 2 meetings at most, 1 to 2 meetings-ish. It's been a few years since we've done this.
Yeah, depending on, at least one.
Yes, at least one.
Possibly.
At least one meeting, possibly a follow-up. And much like any other subcommittees, the schedule for that would be based on the members' availability. So if we have folks who might be interested in jumping onto that, that would be excellent. You can either speak now and/or we can do an email question later. Anyone?
I can do it.
I'm happy to help.
All right. We need one more. Julie, Zach, and anyone else up for naming?
Sure.
All right.
Let's do it.
There you go.
This'll be fun.
Love it. All right, perfect. So Diane will help coordinate meetings for that and get you guys set up and underway. All right, that moves us on to ongoing business. Our big topic for this evening brings us back to the FY25 school budget, and we are ready to hear some updates on that. So we'll turn that back over to you, Dr. O'Shea.
Thank you. Take a moment to share my screen. All right, so I think we're good to go. So jump right in. The budget calendar, I've added a few elements to it. I think it's, this has been one of those years where it feels like, we're chasing a bouncing ball, or there's been some moving targets. We began on January 24th when the governor's budget was announced, and we received the report that Chapter 70 was going to come in at the minimum amount of a $30 per student increase, and so that was sort of one of the first curveballs that we had to respond to. January 30th was when the committee had its first opportunity to review an initial recommendation, but it was shortly after that we learned that we needed to develop a budget that was reflective of an additional $167,000 in reductions, and so that was reflected in the February 6th public hearing that we had. On the 13th, the committee had another opportunity to hear an update and have some discussion of the FY25 budget, and that brings us to February 27th, and you'll notice that February 27th sort of stands, though this is an important night and it involves final deliberation and vote, you'll notice that it really stands in the middle of that budget calendar, that this will continue to evolve as it makes its way to the select board and as we receive final aid numbers from the state, and ultimately town meeting on May 14th. I won't linger on this slide, but these are the budgetary goals that had been previously reviewed and considered, but really reflects our commitment to tying our budget decisions into existing district goals. And sometimes it's a matter of making critical investments, and sometimes it's a matter of protecting existing programming. This is one of those years where we're in that mode where we're trying to protect existing service levels, given the revenue challenges that we have experienced. And so this is, again, a familiar slide to the committee, but sharing it again with the wider community is a high-level summary of the FY25 budget, reflective of a general fund request from the town of $40,063,648, which is a little bit over $1.1 million over FY24. That's a historically, in recent history anyways, that's a significant increase. It is a 3% increase from the general fund over FY24. You'll notice that the number in the bottom right, the total budget would increase by $1.19 million. That's the figure we arrive at when we factor in special revenue referring to federal and state grants and other sources of revenue to the district. Again, a familiar slide to the committee, but worth reiterating certainly to the wider community is sort of the Chapter 70 dilemma that has created some of our budget challenges this year. And you'll see that while we've experienced healthy increases in Chapter 70 aid from the state in the last couple of years, you'll see that that increase declined dramatically. We expected to decline dramatically for FY25, that $81,690 increase representing the minimum amount that a district could receive. The calculation is $30 per student. I would suggest that though we've seen those increases in recent years, that it's been a challenge to even with those increases to have those increases keep up with our operational costs relating to running the district and meeting our contractual obligations. Also would want to clarify that Chapter 70 represents about $7 million of our over $40 million budget, so we're really reliant largely on the general fund and other forms of special revenue. So to go back to the slide that I presented earlier, again, a high-level budget recommendation summary for you. The detailed documents have been and remain in your meeting packet, and once again, a thanks to Mr. Mazza for painstakingly compiling those very, very detailed budget documents that you've had an opportunity to review. And again, stacking this general fund increase that we are requesting, stacking it up to increases that we've seen in recent years, you'll see that though this is a challenging budget, it still represents a 3% increase from the general fund from the town of Long Meadow. So that 3% number is sort of historically on the high side. And so we're grateful that the town provides us the level of support that they do. And it's obviously, we're fortunate to live and work in a community that has such a high commitment to public education. And you'll see the 2.84% represents the total budget when you factor in all funds, not just the general fund. Again, a slide that you've seen before, but I wanted to highlight it once again. And this is a listing of some of the non-entitlement grants that support the work of our educators and support our students. And I guess I'd say that I'm proud of this list. I think it represents, teachers and administrators and town officials hustling for whatever grants are out there and grants that support our strategic goals. And so everything from the Drug-Free Communities Grant to the new SEL grant that will provide $93,000 in funding to Longmeadow in FY25. Bridges Math was funded by a grant. We have a modest amount of money from the state for chronic absenteeism. Obviously, the MSBA grants to upgrade our middle school facilities, and on and on. I won't read every bullet here, but certainly I think an impressive list of outside funding that we seek and pursue at every opportunity, and can't let the moment slide without mentioning the great support that we receive from the Longmeadow Educational Excellence Foundation through LEAF grants. So, great stuff. So, just to kind of bring us back to the last couple of meetings and what I would call the Tier 1 and Tier 2 budget adjustments, that from the January 30th meeting and from your February 6th meeting. And this is where we had left off at the last time that we had presented a recommendation to you. The items in the black font are from the January 30th presentation. The items in the blue font were the sort of the Tier 2 reductions that needed to be made at your February 6th meeting. So since that time, and throughout the whole budget season, we've received a lot of valuable feedback from community members, from staff. This committee has had some robust conversations here and with us administratively. And so tonight, we wanted to present sort of a revised set of recommendations, and one that is, I think part of the challenge was we developed an initial set of recommendations, and it was shortly after that we had to identify the additional $167,000 in reductions in the blue font. And I think that we've had some opportunity to gather some feedback and think this through. And so tonight, what we would propose to you is represented on this slide. And so this recommendation tonight would allow us to restore fully the library services position that was considered back on February 6th. It would also allow us to restore the nursing position that was also under consideration at your February 6th meeting. I think it goes without saying that this is good and important news. I think the wellness needs of children are more complex than ever, and obviously the information literacy skills that kids need in 2024 are more important than ever. So we're pleased that we can present a budget that fully restores library services and nursing services to their current levels. The challenge here, you'll see, is that the special education supervisor position that had been proposed back on January 30th, that we would pull back on that recommendation. And that, I offer that as something that we should really thoughtfully consider. That position, I think, remains important and critical for us if we are in a position to restore that at some point, if we're ever an opportunity to revisit it, I should say. The world of special education has become more complex in recent years. And we also think that were we to be in a position to add that special education supervisor position, that it would increase the capacity of our assistant principals to support school-wide behavioral interventions and provide targeted interventions as well, and be a support to families and teachers. So for your consideration, and we can come back to this slide certainly, but just to kind of back up a little bit, there are still plenty of variables that need to be pinned down, and Mr. Mazza develops very thoughtful, highly informed projections, but he doesn't have a crystal ball. And there's still plenty of costs and revenue that still need to be firmly pinned down. Chapter 70, we remain hopeful that the legislature will adjust that minimum that we're receiving, and that rather than $30 per student, that they might see to it to give us a minimum of, let's say, $100 per student, as they have in recent years. Utilities, we have not locked into a utility contract for the 24-25 school year, and so that remains kind of something that we need to continually pin down. Enrollment, the number of kindergarten sections is another variable. The budget before you tonight accounts for 11 kindergarten sections. We're currently running 10 kindergarten sections. We'll have to keep our eyes on that to see if that 11 is an appropriate number. If enrollment comes in lower than anticipated, perhaps we're back at 10. If it comes in greater than anticipated, perhaps we're up to 12. So we'll keep our eyes on that. We've also received a lot of communication about the rising third grade at Wolf Swamp. That certainly is on our watch list, and I know this committee shares an interest in trying to provide, to alleviate that as well. So there's a lot of competing needs that we're trying to balance at this point. Transportation costs, I think that's something that we want to take a hard look at as well, to see if we could achieve some operational efficiencies in that area. So that's ongoing. Special education services, obviously we always want to be responsive to the needs of students as they surface. And fee-based revenue in the form of the fees associated with athletics and preschool are something that we'll need to take a look at. And also this committee at an upcoming meeting will need to consider our school choice placements and how many students we enroll via school choice, because there's a revenue factor associated with that. So there's still many moving parts here. But I think, I'd suggest maybe this is the sort of important part of our discussion tonight, is that there are many ongoing considerations here. We have to continually look at the effects of that 1.0 FTE reduction at Long Meadow High School. Mentioned earlier in the meeting that the course sign-up process is sort of just beginning. So we'll want to make sure that we'll want to evaluate how that reduction plays out at Long Meadow High. The number of sections serving that third grade at Wolf Swamp next year, as we talked about, the number of kindergarten sections. I couldn't agree with more with our speaker earlier, who spoke to the value of the student support centers at our Title I schools. Excuse me, Glenbrook and Wolf Swamp. In fact, we've seen those meet with great success, and as an administrative team, we often talk about the potential to replicate that in all of our schools. So indeed, our student support specialists have done amazing work, and those student support centers have been really, really valuable to help students who are, experiencing some behavioral challenges or just need a place to get refocused, work on executive functioning skills, or receive some social emotional support. We all know that that is increasingly important, especially for adolescents nowadays. So that reduction that we are projecting in Title I federal funds creates a real challenge for us. As recently as today, I was on the phone with a DESE official who was a federal grants liaison, trying to understand that Title I reduction and to see if there would be any hope that it could come in higher than we anticipate. I'd want to manage expectations. I didn't hear anything that suggested that Title I would be restored to the, close to the level that it's at this year. But that number isn't locked in stone either. But it is, those student support centers do provide, critical Tier 2 interventions, as our speaker earlier mentioned. I couldn't agree more with the way that was characterized. This recommendation tonight, it forgoes the proposed addition of the special education supervisor. I know that this committee has had a strong partnership in recent years with our Special Education Alliance of Long Meadow. In fact, I see one of our co-presidents here with us tonight, Diane Porfilio. Diane and I talked about the importance of these supervisor positions in terms of, these are folks that work shoulder to shoulder with staff to organize the work and provide critical support to students and families. And so that's something that I'd like us to continually kind of keep on our radar screen, is the value that position potentially can provide to families and staff. This is a recommendation that is not able to fund the elementary band instructor position that was added in the 23-24 school year, so we would revert back to the staffing levels that had been in place the decade or so prior to this school year. Elementary literacy, we have dozens of educators working really, really hard to identify an elementary literacy curriculum for our K-5 students, and really hopeful that we're able to create a vehicle for funding that adoption. I think we have some options that we have discussed with Finance Subcommittee and even with the larger committee here. Instructional coaching. I think this committee has been very supportive of our efforts to deepen and expand our capacity with instructional coaching. These are the folks that, again, ensure that our practices are aligned, ensure that teachers are getting the professional support that they need, and ensure that our units of study are appropriately aligned for kids and families. And then, again, making sure, how do we ensure that we continue to make those investments on the right side of that MTSS framework, the behavioral side, the social emotional side. And down the road, future budgets, as we pin down a very clear curriculum renewal and adoption process, I think this committee shares an interest in fully funding that and having budgets be reflective of that curriculum adoption process. So those are some of the things that we should continue to keep on our radar. I'd say to anybody watching tonight that the budget development process is a critical stage tonight, but there's still some work in front of us, that this budget will continue to evolve, that our allocations will continue to evolve in the months ahead. And going back to our budget calendar and next steps, tonight, consideration, sorry, I won't have the date right, February 27th, to vote the budget, and then next week an opportunity to present that budget to the Select Board and Finance Committee. So, happy to answer any questions you might have, and
I have a question just for people who are watching and who are watching later, because I think you're talking about the budget, like ways to change the budget in two different ways. Like, one is we can amend the budget, and then the other is just the overall levels are set, but we can change the allocations. So at what point do we reach like the point of no return on actually amending the budget itself?
No, I appreciate you asking that, because I think if Chapter 70 were to come in higher than anticipated, higher than what we're thinking where it is right now, then I think I would want this committee to consider developing an amended budget request in response to that. And I'll turn to Mr. Mazza on the mechanics of that and to answer your question about when we reach that point of no return.
You really have, welcome to town meeting, it can be amended on town meeting floor, the amount that's going to be allocated based on what revenue we're going to receive. But even into next year during the fall town meeting, if additional revenue that was not approved as part of the warrant at annual town meeting comes in, because whoever the state doesn't approve their budget till after town meeting, it could then be recognized, voted at the fall town meeting, and then added to our budget at that point. So we do have opportunities, but for what you're approving tonight, again, it would have to be at the annual town meeting in May.
Okay.
And Tom, in perhaps even last year, after the committee had voted the budget, the committee developed an amended budget that was reflected at the town meeting warrant.
Yeah, and again, that was the amount that was then amended on the meeting floor as they were reading that particular motion for the budget approval.
I think Chapter 70 presents the best opportunity to put us in a position to develop an amended budget.
Thank you, excellent question. Other questions, thoughts, feedback, et cetera? Michaela?
I have a question about the Title I funding that you were talking about. You were saying that, because I know in the past we talked about if we funded this position outside of Title I, we wouldn't be able to fund it again, but then you're saying we might not get Title I funding back ever? Is that what you're saying?
It's been reduced, so we experienced a 38% reduction in Title I federal funds, so that's a pretty significant hit. And so that's reflective of the FY22 federal census. What I'm told today is that part of the reason that may have happened is that COVID relief payments and COVID credits probably left more people above the poverty line. So coming out of COVID in FY22, when that census was developed, it's likely that explained why fewer Long Meadow families were identified as being below the poverty level. And so that Title I number, I wouldn't say it's Title I federal funds haven't gone away, and there's a chance that they could rebound in future years, but it is year-to-year funding. It's meant to be supplemental funding, and it's meant to fund programs and staffing that the budget otherwise wouldn't allow for. And so Mr. Mazza could explain the importance of not, sort of backfilling with regular funds anything that had previously been funded by Title I. So
Yeah, I mean, they encourage you not to supplant by you can use local funds, but then, as you indicated, if the funding increases, it would not be allowed to then transfer those FTEs back onto the grant, because the district had found money. Instead of supplementing what the budget can provide, now we're just supplanting what we were already paying for, and it's not allowed under federal funding.
you'd have to do something above and beyond with
Different.
those additional Title I funds.
That isn't currently already being provided for within the budget that the district has.
Thank you.
And is that from year to year, or is it just within 1 year?
No,
So
it's from year to year. They're gonna, they would look at what you previously had been funding.
Okay.
And then, well, if your funding increased, well, what did you add? Are those services that are provided across the district already to all the schools? Did they exist prior to this funding becoming available?
Gotcha.
They're looking, I think, for the district to provide additional supplemental services to support students.
And only 2 of our schools in recent years have been identified as Title I schools, Glenbrook and Wolf Swamp. There have been years when it's only been Wolf Swamp.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Other thoughts and questions related to the budget? Mary?
So Christine Weber, she left, but she gave a great overview of a lot of the services that she provides in her position. So what will the student support centers look like with the loss of these positions?
Right. So we have currently,
position.
currently 2 positions, and so this would leave us with with Title I funds that would fund 1 position. And so perhaps we would look at, we have some decisions still to be made, but perhaps we would look at stretching 1 position over the 2 Title I schools, Glenbrook and Wolf Swamp. But again, that's sort of TBD. Those are decisions that we'd have to sit down as an administrative team and bring you back some information on how we would propose using what Title I funds are available to us. But it's likely that we would need to extend the staffing across both schools, the programming across both schools. You know, it's certainly not ideal. We would love to be in a position to not only keep those services where they are, but also extend them to all of our schools, you know.
So I have a related question, but that is also about a different item on the budget, and it has to do with the special education supervisor, the role of the assistant principals. So I'm reading between the lines here, but what I'm hearing you say is we really need this position, but it doesn't work in this budget, and I guess I'm just feeling like we're potentially losing this, or we are with this budget, losing this Title I position. We're saying, and I don't want to put words into your mouth, but that the APs are experiencing a higher level of involvement with behavioral supports. And I think, and we talked about this a little bit last time, but the term supervisor for this position is a little bit confusing because this is not an administrator role.
Yeah.
But I guess my question is, do the assistant principals have the special education background to be able to fulfill the role that you're suggesting with this supervisor position? And do they have the capacity to do that?
Right.
And then with the loss of some of these other Tier 2 positions, what does that look like for how we're supporting students who have high needs?
Right. I think it's a bandwidth issue for our assistant principals. I think increasingly we're seeing our elementary schools, you know, require more attention to school-wide positive behavioral supports. We're seeing more students have very acute behavioral reactions that require intervention on the spot by assistant principals. I think our assistant principals continue to grow in their capacity to lead special education, and they get a lot of great support from our special education director, Nicole Paris-Grow, and they're working with the existing special ed supervisors and working with the principals to provide families with the support that they need. But I think, you know, part of the reason that we had initially proposed this is that we believe that the supervision and coordination of special education has become more complicated in recent years. We have a new IEP that is going to be introduced to all schools next year. It's a longer, denser IEP that I think will ultimately serve students well, but it will require some training. It will require, you know, I think it will test the capacity of our assistant principals and our special education supervisors. So I think, you know, we have elementary schools with, you know, over 400 students each in 6 grades, 7 in the case of Wolf Swamp. And so they're busy places, and the social emotional needs of kids, the behavioral needs of kids are more pronounced now than ever. And I like that you introduced the idea that there are special education supervisors, but it's a title that is recognized in our contract, and that's why we call it special education supervisors. But in fact, these are folks, like I said, who are in the trenches, they're working directly with families, they're working directly with teachers to make sure that, we're communicating clearly and that we're being attentive to process. And, candidly, Long Meadow values strong communication, and we value attention to process. And those are things that our special education supervisors keep us on task with, along with our assistant principals. So I think, the world has gotten more complicated in the last 5 years. And I think, for us to have an arrangement where we have principals, assistant principals working with special education supervisors across our elementary and all schools, rather, then I think that would benefit families and it would benefit staff. But it's just, does this budget allow for it? And, how can we create the space? If that's a position that I think we would all like to see included in this budget, but we're balancing a lot of competing needs, and, to introduce that position, it might result in us, losing some direct service positions in other areas, nursing, library. So there's a lot to balance here. Long answer to your question, but it's an important question. I think it's the question that we've been talking a lot about.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Julie, and then Michaela?
Well, I was just going to ask this as a follow-on to Mary's question. Is it fair to say that this budget is, the efficiencies that we're finding in the budget are at the expense of the kids who have the highest needs? Because I think when you put the effect on Title I together with the effect on special education, it certainly reads that way.
Yeah. I think we're also, the best supports are at sort of tier 1, 2, right? So this is a budget that tries to be protective of class size and to give kids that, that daily support that they experience from classroom teachers. And, that's your best preventative, proactive strategies when tier 1 teachers have the time and the capacity and the class size to serve kids the way they need to. So, ideally you're meeting those needs at that tier. But, this is, librarians and nurses provide that, as we heard in recent meetings, librarians and nurses also provide that level of connection, and they're strengthening relationships. They're often the glue in a school. Nurses are very frequently our go-to for kids who are having some adjustment issue during the day. Librarians are there to, provide kids with those key information literacy skills, but it's also a welcoming place where kids can pursue those topics that are of unique interest to them. So it takes a village in a school, and all of these positions provide that critical SEL support, I'd say. But if we're, my hope is that in the months ahead that we're in a position to address some of these unmet needs, and it's obviously up to us with the administrative team working with the committee to identify, what are the highest priority unmet needs, because there are, as this slide shows, there are several, many unmet needs here. It's a difficult thing to say as a superintendent. We all get into this business, and you're here because we want to do more and better for kids, and it's
I know we're asking you these questions as though you are not making, we know that you would have preferred to have all of these things funded.
For sure,
so.
yeah.
Michaela?
I was going to ask something similar to what Julie just asked. I guess just on top of that, just what is the plan for the new IEP rollout? If that's something the assistant is going to be on, the assistant principals are going to be a part of that process.
Principals, assistant principals, the special education supervisors, our director of special education, Nicole Paris-Grow, who's been a strong advocate for supporting our special educators. And the truth is, Long Meadow and other communities have experienced more turnover among the special education ranks. I mean, it's become increasingly difficult to find qualified, talented special educators, and that's true in every school district in America, probably. There's a shortage of special educators, and so supporting our special educators is really important.
Other questions? Adam?
I mean, everything that's been said, pardon me, here tonight has been pretty metered and responsible. So I think it's time for our dumb question of the night. This is a budget that's very complex, and as we've said, there are significant portions of it that we're talking about that are lacking funding. We've got elementary literacy coming in at between $200,000 and $800,000, instructional coaching, let's say 2 of those, you're talking about another $100,000 there. We haven't talked about any of the behavioral supports for the MTSS that we want to do to be able to put in these different tiered responses so we can take care of kids' behavior as well. I mean, the thing that we've heard from members of this community, whether through emails or through the people who've taken the time, to speak and share their opinions, is that they want education to be, at the forefront. It's the, the keystone to Longmeadow. That's what they think is a priority, and it's got long-reaching ties to even property values and other aspects that are also important to people. So given the proportion of the cost of bringing in this special education position compared to, again, $200,000 to $800,000, $100,000, is it that unreasonable that we go to the select board and say, we want to add this position? We understand it's above the 3.1% that we want for the budget, but if this is what the people want, isn't it about us to, isn't it our responsibility to say we have to weigh that in the general budget of the town to say that we need a greater commitment, since, as you say, things have changed in the past 5 years. Cost of doing business is higher.
I'm not sure you need to make that decision tonight, and part of this is, or perhaps you do. You could. Right? You certainly could. Totally within your purview to do that, and it wouldn't be, you're lined up to go to the select board next week. But I also want to be cognizant of the full list that's there, and as critical, I could speak to the importance of elementary class size. I could speak to the importance of the special education supervisor. I could speak to the importance of the student support specialist positions. So there's I think we have a mechanism to address the elementary literacy adoption, and that's something that we've been in conversation with finance sub about, and also town officials. So I think we have a mechanism that we can put in place to fund that. But yeah, certainly can speak to, everything on this list. These are, all important for so many different reasons.
Yeah, you want to do everything that you can for kids, but it just seems like a special education position would be a lot easier to get into the budget than some of these larger ticket items.
And you always have opportunities to reallocate down the road. In other words, tonight, as I've said before, you're setting the size of the budget pie, but how that's sliced and diced, that those can be discussions that can continue between now and into the next school year.
Julie, and then Jamie.
I've asked a couple of things.
All right, Jamie first then.
No, I guess my question, just listening to everything, and so who did this job this year?
Which?
Special ed, so we're adding that position. We went through this whole year. Who's doing this work right now? I'm assuming someone is, because I trust in you guys.
Yeah.
You do a fabulous job in that area. Someone's doing it.
So to take you through the whole range of, so we have a special education supervisor that's just for preschool. We have 2 special education supervisors that serve our elementary schools and also work to support students who are placed out of district. We have at the middle level, or additionally at the elementary level, we have assistant principals who are involved in the coordination of special education. At the middle level, our assistant principals are split between operational work and special education coordination. At the high school, we have a special education supervisor as well, who works with the administration. So but there's there's a lot of people tugging on the rope, and along with our director of special education, Nicole Paris-Crowe. But at the elementary level specifically, it's 2 special education supervisors working with 3 assistant principals. And
So if we don't have this position, who's doing the work next year?
I think we have to sit down and just really think about the division of labor and the division of responsibilities, and given the new realities, the new IEP and the increasing complexity of special education, and the capacity and the expertise of our assistant principals, factoring all those things in, really sit down and just lay out the responsibilities, and this year, I think our special education supervisors and our assistant principals are incredibly busy, being incredibly responsive to families and trying to support special educators, and also remembering that our supervisors also support paraprofessionals. We've had considerable turnover in the paraprofessional ranks, as all school districts have. And so as you bring on new paraprofessionals, those folks need to be onboarded, they need to be trained, they need to be brought up to speed on cases and caseloads, and so our special education supervisors do that as well. They're there. I've thought about them more recently as coaches, and so much, I think we got a little derailed with the title supervisor, and we have to abide by that because that's the title in the contract, but these are folks who I believe are working at the ground floor. Sometimes they're rolling up their sleeves and covering classes and working even directly with kids, so.
Do we,
Yep.
not put you on the spot,
Yep.
do we think we can create a plan that would create, I get it, we want this, and
Yep.
I can go through a list, I would say other things. We'll swamp 3rd grade, makes
Yep.
me a little bit more nervous if
Sure.
I was a parent in
Yep.
3rd grade than
Yep.
that, right? So it depends on what situation you're in,
Yeah.
right? Whether a kindergartner, if you have a kindergarten class that's at 19, I might say, hey, get 12, just like we did last year, and we did that preemptively last year, created lower classrooms, we overspent our budget,
Yep.
and we're still overspent on our budget at this period in time. So you always have choices. I just think if we have, I get it, if we get the wiggle room, say we get attrition, say the utilities come in great, it's great. I just am not a big favor of asking above the 3%, given where the town is, given what we're going to ask the town as it relates to curriculum.
Yep.
I think we got to kind of stay within some sort of
Yeah,
norm.
I think you're right. I
I
think
mean-
the town's in a, and that's something we do have to factor in. I mean, I think the town is in a challenging fiscal position right now. And, we have to be responsive to taxpayers. I also think that, one of the goals, I think, when you hit challenging budget development scenarios like this, for me, one of the goals is to try to preserve existing services as much as possible, And so I think that was part of the thinking in restoring the nursing position and restoring the library services at the middle level, is trying to preserve existing level of services. And then perhaps we're going to be in a position, as the spring unfolds, perhaps we're going to be in a position to come back to the committee to take a look at some of these other items on the list.
Yeah, because I
it's-
kind of look at this budget as, I get that,
Yeah.
and I look at all these different line items on here where a lot of these could really break in our favor, we could
Sure.
have 10 sections of, kindergarten, and then we go, okay, we got some options here. We
Yep.
have additional attrition, may not be a good thing or a bad thing,
Yep.
breaks in our favor, and then we have this extra wiggle room to do some of these other things that have to be prioritized. And there's going to be 5 things that everybody's going to want, but we're going to have to pick 1 or 2 of
Yeah,
them.
I think and utilities is perhaps one of the,
A huge one, yeah.
one of the biggest variables on that list. Yeah.
But, I mean, I think going 3% in what we're asking general fund, that's a lot for this town, given that there's all these other town budgets that we have to factor in, because as we take, someone else loses in this town. So it's a give or take thing. Somebody else has to lose. So there's winners and losers here. If we take more, some other service that maybe somebody else finds valuable in town, more than the school committee, what we find valuable is gonna lose. So I just, I would just be cautious on that, and the curriculum discussion that we've had, that's gonna be a big ask, right? And outside of what we're talking about here, so.
Can I ask Julie? Okay, so I have like procedural questions. One is, given that we're waiting to see how certain things break, why is it important for us to vote through the budget now?
Great, kick that one down.
So by charter, there's a time frame in which the select board has to review, the finance committee has an opportunity to review it in order to approve it before it has to go to the printer for the warrant. So there's kind of a very tight time frame from when we have to have a budget, a school committee approved budget, because what the school committee votes and approves has to be reflected within the warrant. So you have to come up with an amount that the town manager then has to be able to either incorporate into her budget or make a different recommendation to the select board about an amount that they believe could be allocated or appropriated to fund the school budget. So right now, the 3% I think fits within those parameters that the town has given us. So to provide or allow the town manager to move forward with her presentation to the select board next week, they're looking for a number that the school committee is accepting, voting on as part of the FY25 budget.
So that I just want to, because I really want us to understand like what our options are and not get kind of pushed into making a decision that we don't need to make. So that meeting has been pushed several times, right? And this has them voting on April 1st. So
March 4th.
no, sorry, it has the select board voting on the town budget on April 1st, right? So our presentation has been moved several times to March 4th, right? Each time we've kind of deliberated.
Right.
So what's our kind of like, I'm not trying to suggest that we don't vote on it tonight, but I just want us to be like clear like what our options are, right? So what is our last date to decide?
I think it's tonight in terms of at least giving a preliminary approved budget. I guess if something changes from now until April 1st, the school committee could revise the budget if there's additional information that's available that changes the current situation.
Okay.
I don't think the state will come out with information in regards to what Chapter 70 funding will be, at least from the legislature side.
Sure.
Unfortunately, it's usually after the date we have to, submit for the warrant.
Okay. And then I think Jamie raised some questions about the reallocation of money within the funding levels. We have that, if we decided that there were certain positions that we wanted to keep, and we asked you to look at how you would keep those under the budget level that you've set.
Yes.
We could provisionally approve this budget and then reserve the right to amend it if you couldn't come up with a way to.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that is what we did at the beginning of last year. Budget we approved, and we changed it before the even budget season started, based off of what we thought was the right thing to do. That's gonna happen a couple times next year, I think, where we're gonna be reallocating money from one line item to another, whether it's utilities to a new teacher, I don't know what it'll be, but it's gonna be something. I mean, I think it's going to move quite a bit next year.
You can set the size of that budget pie tonight, but then at future meetings, you could require us to come back to you with a plan for, how would you reallocate, within that approved budget, what would your plan be to reallocate in order to fund something on that list? Yeah.
And/or enrollment or other factors, it might mean that we amend not just the allocation of that number, but literally reorganize the number. We might be able to say, okay, there's an extra $100,000 that we have become aware of that we can add to the budget. We'd like to amend the budget to reflect that number, et cetera, if
I
more
think-
money turns up.
Right.
moving forward.
I think understand the challenges with, the larger challenges with doing this, but I think it also preserves our right to do what Adam is suggesting, to also amend the budget to be larger than what the town has requested it to come in at.
Correct. That-
Causing problems.
No, but you're correct, that
we're just
we
exploring our
we have a recommendation from the town to present this budget at 3%. We could present a budget that is a 2.8% increase, we could present a budget that is a 3.1 or 3.2% increase. We know that their request is 3%. So, to paraphrase, it is potentially trickier to move forward with a request or a recommended budget that is higher than what they have requested we come in at. But yes, that is also.
And if the select board chose not to incorporate the school committee's request, they would be required to present your request at town meeting.
Correct.
I think that one of the things that's difficult about doing some of this live in the meeting is that, to Jamie's point, there are a lot of different things on this list that we see as necessities that are being reduced. I think the other thing that is hard about it is that within the space of the meetings, which are only every 2 weeks and we have to cover other business, right? We're not able to we don't always have the full picture of the school's budgets and all of the decision-making along the way to squeeze. So I think we're really kind of relying on you two mostly, but all of the school, to help us understand if we're making hard choices, have we looked at every aspect of the school district's budget and made those hard choices all along the way? So are we looking at it in, not just music, but also athletics, and are we looking at it evenly across the elementary, middle, and
Right.
high schools?
Right. Transportation.
Yeah.
All, have we looked under every rock to see what operational efficiencies we could achieve? And those are some of the things that can still happen. So, mentioned earlier that, Tom and I have been talking about, are there any transportation efficiencies that we could achieve that would result in some savings? So those are things that we can continue to explore at your direction, or with, or perhaps things that we come up with ourselves. Athletics, transportation, utilities, contracts, consulting fee, everything, everything should be on the table, for sure.
Other thoughts, questions? All right, folks, well, we're at that point then. Now is the time where we decide if we would like to make a motion that reflects the number that has been presented in the revised recommendation, which that total number is on the third
Oh, I'm
page.
sorry, yep. We had, thank you, Diane.
Oh, thank you. Or
Mr.
if-
Gantis took the liberty of
Perfect. Or if there is
typing up a potential motion for
different
you.
number that we would like to make a recommendation for. The number that we're looking at is right on the third slide. That revised budget is the 3% increase, and that would be a total budget of $43,299,679, with a general fund request of $40,063,648. So those are the numbers that are potentially in front of us, and
Gotcha.
or.
Parliamentary
Marie, you want me
procedure.
to-
As
Yes.
far as the aforementioned reservation, would that need to be presented in the original motion, or would that be, once the motion has been made, a proposed
So if, for instance, you had a dollar number in mind that you would like to add or subtract from this total budget number,
More abstract.
When would you put that in? Or
Well,
would
just
you be
how you were
particular?
saying, like last year, that a reservation was made to amend.
So that, you're talking about what we did last year, where we're adding in sections and other things as the year progresses?
That was after the
Yeah,
budget
that's
was
after
already
the budget.
approved.
Right, so when the motion is made, there doesn't have to be an addendum requested to allow for a reservation.
We
time.
basically.
We would do that.
Okay.
On an ongoing
Again, it
basis.
was just parliamentary
Yeah.
procedure, wondering how that goes.
So on a normal finance committee, sub-finance committee meeting, we're approving all of these transfers from one budget line to another. We're spending money on kindergarten that was allocated towards utilities. If that,
Yeah.
we do that probably, what would you guess, 3, 4, 5 times a year?
Okay.
Maybe a little bit more.
Just wondering if that had
Yeah.
to be just any.
No,
No, that's a great question.
that's 100% at the committee's discretion
Okay.
as it goes. So.
Excellent.
Unless you wanted a number that was above what the motion, yeah, right. You give that to Jay or for you. It's for you.
All right.
Do you want to read? You want me to?
Questions, thoughts?
I have it already.
You got it? Go ahead.
Okay. Is there any other questions, or should I?
Any other questions? No? Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
I move that the school committee approve the FY 2025 proposed school department budget in the amount of $43,299,679 with a general fund allocation of $40,063,648 and submit this amount to the town manager for inclusion at the annual town meeting on Tuesday, May 14th, 2024.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Any further discussion related to the current budget motion?
Could I say one more thing?
Absolutely.
So just on the point that we were just talking about, I would feel really uncomfortable supporting this budget if we felt like we were allowing reductions in things that directly affect classrooms and kids and teachers and hadn't really pressure tested the other items in the budget that that might have less of an effect on children's education and the daily lives of teachers. So I hope that we can continue that discussion even after the vote.
Absolutely. No, and I will say thank you. I know that Mr. Mazza and also Dr. O'Shea and also Jamie have spent a not small amount of time already looking at utilities in particular. I know you recently found some more wiggle room there, so continuing to do that, every penny helps here in this year. Absolutely. Other comments or feedback? Seeing none, we will move to a vote. Zach?
Yes.
Adam?
Yay.
Michaela?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Jamie?
Yes.
And yes for me as well. All right, folks. Thank you. Moving forward, we will meet with the Select Board on March 4th. That is next week on Monday evening. I will be there. I know Jamie, you're typically there as well.
Yep.
And anyone else who would like to attend, that is also a meeting that is a good one for us to be at if possible.
Is there here?
Yes,
Oh.
here. Yep. 6 o'clock though, correct?
If you want to go, please let me know, because I would have to post if there's a quorum.
Unless folks are coming to observe as opposed to participate.
But as long as if they don't participate, that's fine. But if anybody wanted to come to the microphone, there was a quorum of you and you started discussing, that would be a problem.
Good to know.
If I didn't post.
Perfect.
Those open meeting laws.
Yes.
Sorry.
Very important. No, that's important to
My
say.
hat.
Thank you.
7, I think.
Oh, is it 7?
I think. We'll let you know.
We'll double check. Yes. I might be thinking middle school building is at 6. That might be why the 6 o'clock is in my head. That's happened a few times tonight. All right, we are moving forward into new business. We have an overnight field trip request that has already been a preliminary approval, and we are looking for a final approval, correct? Yes, this is for the Long Meadow High School girls lacrosse team. They are looking to head to Albany, New York on April 12th and 13th. We talked about this last meeting. They'll be playing 2 games, one Friday afternoon and one again on Saturday morning. So any discussion, questions, and/or possible motions related to this request?
I move on the recommendation of the superintendent that the school committee approve the overnight field trip for students from Long Meadow High School girls lacrosse team to travel to Albany, New York on April 12th, 2024 to April 13th, 2024.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion?
No answers.
Thank you. All right, seeing no others, we'll move to a vote. Zach?
Yeah.
Adam?
Yay.
Michaela?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Jamie?
Yes.
And yes for me as well. We have no executive session planned, so we have one final motion to adjourn.
I move that the school committee adjourn the February 27th, 2024 school committee meeting.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. Zach?
Yes.
Adam?
Yay.
Michaela?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Jamie?
Yes.
And yes for me as well. Thank you, everyone, for your time and energy on this, and we will see you again in a few weeks, and/or on March 4th.